First, the sun hung low over the dense canopy of the forest, its dying rays casting long shadows that danced ominously against the gnarled trunks of ancient trees. A group of 5 friends, Megan, Kyle, Jenna, Chris, and Tom, had decided to escape the suffocating grip of city life for a weekend camping trip in the remote Whispering Pines National Park. They had heard tales of its beauty, of the serenity that enveloped the place, but what they didn't know was the darkness lurking beneath the surface. "Come on, guys, last one to the campsite buys dinner," Kyle shouted, sprinting ahead with a mischievous grin plastered across his face. The others laughed, following suit, laughter echoing through the trees as they kicked up leaves and dirt. "Let's set up by the creek," Megan suggested, pointing to the sound of bubbling water that seemed to call them. The group agreed, and within an hour their tents were pitched, a fire crackled to life, and the air was thick with the scent of roasting marshmallows. As night fell, the atmosphere shifted. The chirping of crickets became a symphony of unsettling sounds, and the laughter of the friends faded into whispers. The campfire flickered, casting eerie shadows on their faces, revealing tension that had begun to build. "Anyone want to share ghost stories?" Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. "I know one," Chris said, his voice dripping with a mixture of bravado and fear. "It's about the Whispering Pines themselves. They say a family went camping here years ago, and they vanished without a trace. The only thing found was their tent, slashed open as if something had torn its way in." "Shut up, man, that's just a story," Kyle scoffed, but a nervous edge crept into his voice. "Right?" Chris continued, undeterred. "The locals say that if you listen closely, you can hear their whispers carried by the wind, begging for help, lost souls trapped in the woods forever." Okay. Let's not ruin the vibe," Megan said, trying to lighten the mood. But as the night deepened, a chill crept into their bones, and the shadows seemed to grow longer, darker. The fire crackled and they huddled closer, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. As the stories turned to jokes, a sudden rustling in the bushes caught their attention. "Did you hear that?" Jenna asked, her eyes wide, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. "Probably just a raccoon," Chris replied dismissively, but even he couldn't shake the unease settling in his stomach. "You sure about that?" Tom chimed in, his voice trembling. "What if it's something more?" "Stop it," Megan snapped, but her nervous laughter betrayed her. They decided to turn in for the night, retreating to their tents, but sleep wouldn't come easily. The forest was alive with sounds, crackling twigs, distant howls, and the ever-present rustling in the shadows. It was around midnight when Megan awoke to a soft whispering, like a breeze weaving through the trees. She unzipped her tent, peering out into the darkness. The fire had died down to embers, casting a ghostly glow. That's when she saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, shrouded in darkness, just beyond the flickering light. "Megan!" Kyle's voice broke through the tension, sleepy and confused. "What are you doing?" "There's someone out there," she whispered, barely able to contain her fear. "Shut up, it's probably just a trick of the light," he said, rolling over. But Megan couldn't shake the feeling of dread that washed over her. "Guys," she called softly, but there was no response. She stepped out of the tent, her heart pounding in her chest. The figure was gone. Maybe it was just my imagination, she thought, but the feeling of being watched remained. Dusra, morning light broke through the trees, illuminating the campsite with an eerie glow. Megan woke to find everyone gathered around the smoldering fire, faces drawn and weary. "Did anyone hear those whispers last night?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Whispers?" Chris scoffed, but his eyes betrayed him. "You're just tired. We all are." But Tom's face was pale. "I thought I saw something moving in the wood," he admitted. "It felt like it was watching us." "It's just the forest playing tricks," Kyle said, his bravado faltering. "Let's go hiking today. We'll shake off the weird vibes." Reluctantly, the group agreed, and they set off into the depths of Whispering Pines, the sun filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air felt thick, heavy, and silence hung like a weight around them. As they hiked, they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin, half hidden by vines and overgrowth. Its windows were shattered and the door hung ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. "Should we check it out?" Jenna asked, her curiosity piqued despite the unease gnawing at her. "Are you insane? We should keep moving," Megan urged, but the others were already approaching the cabin. Inside, the air was stale, filled with dust and decay. The remnants of a life long abandoned lay scattered. A broken chair, a tattered rug, remnants of a family that had once called this place home. "This is creepy," Tom muttered, glancing nervously around. "Why would anyone want to camp here?" "Maybe they didn't choose to leave," Chris said, his voice low. "Maybe they were taken." The group exchanged uneasy glances, but before they could leave, a loud crash echoed from the back of the cabin. "Did you hear that?" Jenna gasped, eyes wide with terror. "It's probably just the wind," Kyle tried to reassure her, but his voice shook. "Let's go," Megan urged, stepping back towards the door. But Chris hesitated, his curiosity getting the better of him. "I'm going to check it out," he said, pushing deeper into the shadows. "Are you crazy?" Tom shouted, but Chris was already gone, swallowed by the darkness. Moments stretched into an eternity, and finally they heard it, a scream that pierced the silence, raw and agonizing. It echoed through the woods, and the friends froze, hearts racing. "Chris!" Megan yelled, but her voice was swallowed by the trees. "Let's get out of here," Tom urged, panic rising in his chest. They turned to flee, but as they reached the door, they were met with the sight of Chris stumbling back into the room, blood streaming down his face. "Run!" he screamed, eyes wide with terror as he collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. "What happened?" Jenna cried, but Chris could only point behind him, his hands shaking violently. The others rushed outside, adrenaline fueling their flight. But what they saw made their hearts drop. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing like coals in the night. "Do you hear them?" the figure whispered, voice like gravel. "They're begging for help. They don't want to be alone." The friends stumbled backward, but the figure advanced, its form shifting and twisting, as if it were made of the very darkness that surrounded them. They turned to run, but the forest had changed. Trees loomed taller, roots reached out like hands, pulling them deeper into the woods. Mundram, panic set in as the friends sprinted through the underbrush, heartbeats thundering in their ears. "This way!" Kyle shouted, but every direction felt wrong. Every path led them further into the dark embrace of the forest. "Where's Chris?" Jenna cried, her voice breaking as she realized he was no longer with them. They had left him behind in the cabin, and a part of her felt that it was too late. "Keep moving!" Tom shouted, fear driving him forward. But the shadows seemed to close in around them, whispering secrets that gnawed at their sanity. As they navigated the maze of trees, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of cries that tore at their minds. "Help us! Help us!" they pleaded, echoing in their ears, drowning out their thoughts. "I can't take this," Megan screamed, collapsing to the ground, clutching her head as if trying to block out the voices. "We have to get out of here." But the forest was alive and it wouldn't let them go so easily. The figure reappeared, emerging from the shadows with a twisted grin that sent shivers down their spines. "You can't leave. They need you." "What do you want from us?" Kyle shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "To join them," the figure replied, voice dripping with malice. "They were lost, and now you will be too." Without warning, it lunged, and in that moment, everything shattered into chaos. The friends scattered, screams echoing through the trees as the figure descended upon them, claws raking through the air, blood painting the ground in crimson splatters. Megan ran, heart pounding, but the forest twisted around her, branches clawing at her skin as she stumbled through the darkness. She could hear the others, their cries fading, lost in the nightmare that surrounded her. Finally, she broke through the trees, collapsing onto a dirt road, gasping for breath. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and as she looked back, the forest loomed behind her, thick and impenetrable. The whispers faded, but the screams remained echoing in her mind. "Megan!" a voice called from the darkness, and she turned only to see Chris emerge, bloodied and broken. "Help me!" "No! Stay away!" she screamed, backing away as he lunged towards her, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. But it was too late. The shadows engulfed her, pulling her back into the depths of whispering pines. The darkness swallowing her screams as the whispers grew louder, a chorus of lost souls that would never be free. In the end, the forest claimed its victims, their laughter replaced by cries for help, their stories silenced as they became one with the very shadows they had dared to explore. And the figure waited, lurking in the darkness, eyes glowing with hunger for the next unsuspecting campers who dared to enter. The forest held its secrets tight, feeding on the fear and despair of those who wandered too close, whispering eternally for help that would never come.